Iran wants the United States to pay for the damage done to it. Yesterday, the president said he wants Iran to pay him back. Neither side has moved an inch, and the strait is still shut. Good morning. It's Tuesday, August 11th. Here's your day, caught up, in about 11 minutes. Start with the sequence, because it happened in 2 steps. On Saturday, Iran's Supreme National Security Council published 6 conditions for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. One of them was that the United States compensate Iran for war damage, and according to CNN, not only for this year's war, but for the conflict fought in June of last year, principally by Israel. Then on Monday, the president answered. He wrote that Iran's representatives were asking for compensation, quote, even though it was never mentioned in any of our negotiations or meetings. He called it, quote, an interesting idea. And then, because now I am likewise demanding compensation from Iran for all of the people that they have killed and gravely wounded with their roadside bombs and many conflicts for which they are famous. He finished. I have instructed my representatives to put this firmly into any, and all, future negotiations. One thing in that post we are not going to repeat. The president put 2 casualty figures in writing. He referred to hundreds of thousands of protesters killed over 50 years, and to 52,000 killed in the last 5 months. Neither figure came with a source, and the published count does not support the second one. Al Jazeera's casualty tracker, drawing on the health ministries of the countries involved, put the total at roughly 7,300 killed across every country in this war. Iran, Lebanon, Israel, the United States, Iraq, and the Gulf. That tracker was last updated in June, so it is a floor, not a current number. But it is an order of magnitude below 52,000. So we are telling you the demand was made, and we are not repeating his arithmetic as a count. If the White House sources that figure, we will report where it came from. CNN's read is that the 2 sides are no closer, and that the fresh requirements, quote, appeared to diminish prospects for a quick deal. Despite optimism last week, an agreement was near. Last week, Iran and Oman were reported close on a framework for managing the waterway. Iran then said an Oman deal would not be enough to reopen it unless Washington meets the conditions. So the one track that was moving is now explicitly not the track that opens the strait. Also on Monday in the Oval Office, the president said this about the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, it's open now. Look, the only one that has control of the Strait of Hormuz right now is the United States Navy. He said the Navy has swept the entire strait for mines. He said the United States controls it 100%. That same day, 6 commercial vessels transited the Strait of Hormuz. The maritime intelligence firm Kepler said traffic was subdued across the past week and weakened further into the weekend. 6 is against a 10-day average of about 11. Before this war, roughly 130 ships a day made that transit. Both of those are on the record, from the same Monday. The president's words are his. The count is Kepler's. We are not going to reconcile them for you, because we cannot. And anyone who tells you the strait is open or shut on the strength of one of those 2 sentences is picking one and ignoring the other. The second story is Tehran, and it partly answers a question we left open yesterday. Yesterday we said nobody had told us whether Iran's 6 conditions still stood. That is still true. Nobody has said. But the supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, did not spend Monday walking anything back. He issued a flurry of decrees appointing 6 more senior military commanders. Ali Abdullahi becomes Armed Forces Chief of Staff. Ahmad Vahidi becomes Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Guard. Ali Azmatye takes the Guard's Navy, and Hossein Teb, a former intelligence chief, takes over the Basij, the volunteer paramilitary force. The decrees themselves call for stronger deterrence, for readiness for what they term powerful offensive operations, and for an expanded domestic intelligence network. That is the text of the orders, not somebody's interpretation of them. The interpretations exist, and they are worth hearing as interpretations. Syed Golkar, of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, points out that most of the 6 appointees come from intelligence rather than operational commands, and reads the pattern as Iran becoming, in his words, a security-dominated bureaucratic regime. On the 2 most senior names, he says it represents a continuation of challenging the United States in the Strait, and is, quote, not a sign of moderation or normalization. Sina Azodi, of George Washington University, says the new security chief belongs to a guard faction that believes the only way to get concessions from Washington is to keep fighting. Those are assessments by academics, not events. We are giving them to you as that. What is an event is the arithmetic. 7 senior security appointments in 2 days, and not one word from Tehran retracting the conditions. That's not the same as the conditions being reaffirmed. It is the absence of a retraction, which is a smaller thing, and we are going to keep calling it the smaller thing until somebody says otherwise. One note on the Supreme Leader. CNN states that Khamenei has not been seen in public since he became leader in late February. Yesterday we reported that Iranian state media had released undated video they said showed him, which CBS said it could not independently verify. Those are not in conflict. Undated, unverified footage released by state media is not a public appearance. And it is worth saying plainly that 6 months into his leadership, nobody outside the Iranian state has confirmed seeing him. Now the number underneath all of it. Kharg Island handles almost all of Iran's crude exports. The shipping analytics firm Windward reported Monday that all 3 of its terminals have been empty for extended periods. The western terminal has seen no loadings for 22 consecutive days. The liquefied petroleum gas terminal, 13. The eastern terminal, 10. There have been no departures from Kharg since July 31st, 11 days as of this morning, and 17 tankers are sitting at anchor nearby, none of them broadcasting their position. Most of that oil goes to Chinese customers, and until about 2 weeks ago it kept moving despite the war. One detail, offered carefully. On July 28th, Iran's semi-official Fars news agency described Kharg as a successful model of resilience and crisis management. Since the end of July, CNN reports, Iranian outlets have said little about export volumes. A change in what a state news agency chooses to talk about proves nothing on its own. We mention it because it's easy to overread, and we would rather you had it with the warning attached. 2 more? Then what to watch. First, the money. And it runs straight back to the top. Brent crude closed Monday around $87.69, near 88. On Sunday evening, we reported it at 84.58. That is a rise of about 3.7% in 2 sessions, on our own arithmetic. Some coverage put Monday's move at nearly 5%. We cannot reconcile that against the price we gave you Sunday, so you are getting the level in our own arithmetic. Bloomberg's read is that oil held a 4-day gain after the president's new demands clouded the outlook for a deal, and that government bonds fell as the oil rally revived inflation worries ahead of tomorrow's inflation report. At the pump, the national average was $4.01 on Monday, essentially unchanged from Sunday, down about 3 cents from Friday, and still about 35% above where it stood before this war began. Second, Yemen, where the UN has now put a name and a date on it. Hans Grunberg is the UN Special Envoy for Yemen. In a statement from Amman on Friday, he said Yemen today faces a greater risk of renewed large-scale conflict than at any point since the UN brokered truce of April 2022. He cited attacks in Marib and Hadramaut causing significant casualties, including civilians, renewed attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and strikes on civilian infrastructure, including airports. He called on all parties to exercise maximum restraint. Since he said it, it has continued. Yemen's internationally recognized government says the Houthis fired ballistic missiles at the port city of Al-Makka and at residential areas in Marib again on Monday. Yemeni forces did not say whether anyone was killed. We are telling you they did not say, because yesterday we spent a minute on 2 competing tolls from that same city. Today nobody is given a number at all. What to watch? July's inflation report lands tomorrow morning. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones expect headline inflation of 3.4% for the year, down a tenth from June, and core inflation of 2.5%, also down a tenth. Remember the frame from yesterday. The live argument at the Federal Reserve is not whether to cut, it's whether to raise. A cool number takes pressure off a September hike. A hot one does the opposite. And after a 4-day run-up in oil, that's not a small question. That's your Tuesday. Every number checked, every gap named. This is no by noon. Back tomorrow before lunch.